આમાં ઓડિશાનું સ્વાગતમ. So I don't know how did I do, but thank you for all waiting long for the lunch, and I don't want to repeat it third time that we are between the lunch and you. Uh, so, so today's whole day has been about transformation and technology. No transformation at a large scale is possible without technology, and no technology is possible without the semiconductors. So I think we have a very eminent panel covering almost all aspects of the semiconductors: government, academia, global industry, and a association which leads the electronics and semiconductor in India. So all four facets. And usually we say, I don't know, I'll say something in Hindi, Guru Govind Dau Khade. I think you have all heard about this. So we will start with Professor Karmalkar, who has been deep into semiconductor technology and now leading IIT Bhubaneswar. So I think throughout the day, we have talked about basically how skilled workforce is the key enabler for any large scale technology development, be it semiconductor, electronics, software. The skilling is the most important, right? So you have been basically a deep researcher in the semiconductor technology while you were in IIT Madras and now IIT Bhubaneswar. So how do you see, first at the national level and then the state level, academic institutions can play a big role in developing the required talent in this important field?
So thank you, Satya Gupta, and organizers for inviting us to this. The purpose of academic institutions is basically human resource development. What the academic institutions can do is to sensitize people to the nature of the semiconductor technology, how it is unique and different from that of others, so that appropriate training program can be done for these. So what I will do is, I will quickly tell you some unique features of semiconductor technology. Now, you know that semiconductor technology requires high capital investment. Let me tell you quickly why does it require capital investment, very high capital investment. It requires very clean air, water, chemicals, gases, and sophisticated equipment. Let me give you some idea. Where is the money required? You take air. If you look at this room, the clean air required for semiconductors should be 10,000 times cleaner than what you have in this room. This requires almost 300 times change in the air per hour to maintain the cleanliness. So this is about air, and similar thing can be said about the gases. Talk about the water. Compared to tap water, you need water for semiconductors devices, which is 1,000 times cleaner. Now, why is it so? Because you know the device is really small, sub-micron size. What is the sub-micron size? If you take your hair, this is about 25 microns in diameter. So you 50 times thinner than your hair is the size of a single device on a chip. So if you would like a chip to function, millions of such devices should all be operational. Not one of them should be dysfunctional. So naturally, the device size being so small, and which is the key to the success of semiconductor technology, you need this level of cleanliness of air, water, and so on. So this is where a large amount of investment goes in. Another unique feature of semiconductor technology is that is highly interdisciplinary. You take a semiconductor fab and design ecosystem. It can employ people who are mathematicians, engineers, physicists, chemists, metallurgists, even economists. Name any area. People from this area are required in the area of semiconductor technology. Yet another interesting feature of this technology is that first the science of it was developed and then came its practice. Compare this with, let us say, other materials. Take glass, take steel. For thousands of years, people have been practicing this technology, and its science in terms of the atomic structure and so on has been developed only recently. So because of this change in the sequence, the level of expertise required to practice semiconductor technology is a little higher. What do I mean by the level of expertise is higher? You need abstract theory. You need a grasp of multiple areas. As I already mentioned, it is interdisciplinary. So therefore, the capital investment in terms of thinking also is higher. So these are the various unique features of semiconductor technology. I will add one more very important thing. Why is it so popular? Because the products are very easy to use. Compare this with any other technology. As the technology advances, the products become more and more difficult to use. You require high level of skill. You take automobile. A cycle is easy to ride. A car, you need a license. If you go to a spacecraft, which is even more advanced, you need even better training, and so on. Whereas for semiconductors, the more advanced the technology is, the more easy the product, right? So you take a mobile phone, for instance, just everybody in the village or anywhere who doesn't have much level of literacy can use it. So these are the features. I think academic institutions can sensitize people to these features and popularize this particular area to develop manpower for the 76,000 crore mission that India has embarked on. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. How many of you, while sitting for last 3 hours, have used your mobile? I think half of you are still using it. I can see that, right? While basically listening to this thing. I think that's the power of the semiconductor which has made it possible. Today, in a mobile phone, we pack the power of a supercomputer of 1990s, which used to be more than basically 5x of this room, single computer. Today, the same power is basically packed into a mobile phone. And that's the level of the technology. In last 30 years, this technology has basically scaled 10,000 times, which no other industry or no other technology in the history of mankind has scaled. So, moving on to more a global scenario. In last 3 years, almost every country has announced their semiconductor initiative, led by basically US CHIPS Act, which was basically passed about 2 years, with basically about $50 billion outlay towards the semiconductor. And India laid out basically its plan with a $10 billion investment in this area. So Rajiv, who is part of the Texas Instruments and also lead India chapter of SIA, which is a global organization in this space. So Rajiv, how do you compare the incentives provided by countries like USA for semiconductor manufacturing under CHIPS Act versus the incentives provided by Government of India for the India Semiconductor Mission?
Thanks, Satya. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. So I think if you see from a figure perspective, I think it may sound that the incentives what Government of India gives, which is 10 billion versus probably $52 billion under the US, may sound smaller, but then the fact is the $52 billion US incentive is probably one time, and Indian, I think it's pretty clear, $10 billion for a specific number of fabs or ATMPs. And what it differentiates, it does not basically talk about a particular technology. It talks about any technology, it talks about ATMP. So I think ours is much more inclusive. We are not focusing on the high-end nodes, which US government is talking about. But if you see today, most of the automotive, most of the space, most of the industrial works on lower nodes, 28 nanometers and below. And that's where probably we have a big advantage and we don't compete with any other geographies today.
Just a follow on, based on my understanding, under the India Semiconductor Mission, the government of India is providing 50% incentive on a pari passu basis. Plus, if we add the state incentive, like the upcoming semiconductor policy from Odisha, that might add another 25%. So that's a 75% of the project cost. Versus US CHIPS Act gives about 35%, right?
Yeah.
Considering that, why do you think that basically most of the semiconductor manufacturing guys are still going to the US and not coming to India?
I think various reasons. I think the first thing is generally people expand where they already have the setup, right? I mean, for example, if you talk about TI, we have a huge setup in US, which is Dallas. I think we are expanding there, and most of the expansion actually happened even before the CHIPS Act came. So I think that is one of the reasons. And of course, the US government is laying red carpet. I think the main reason, if you ask me, I think India does not have a history of producing semiconductors. We may have smaller fabs, which are labs more than fabs. And most of the raw materials which goes into those fabs are imported. And that may be the case in many cases as well.
That's the case with
That's
Taiwan
a global,
also, right?
yeah, I know. But then I think we still have to kind of graduate, have some small commercial success. And then I think I compare it to the same state when TI decided to set up its shop way back in 1985. Before that, nobody did. And after that, now it is a history. We have more than all the top 20 semiconductor companies have their development centers, and they have the largest development centers in India. I think it's a question of start. The moment that, somebody starts, and we will soon hear in the next couple of months announcements for that. And I will see many companies who are still shying away will start coming because of various reasons, whether it is talent, whether it is availability of and the SOPs. I see a very bright future for semiconductors.
Thank you, Rajiv. If there is a question from audience, before I move to Krishna, we may take it to make it more interactive. Any questions from the audience? Looks like none, right? So, Krishna, as a part of ISA, we publish the market report on the semiconductors and electronics every 2 years or so, right? So, obviously, any semiconductor fab will need to cater to the global market, but if you have to give a perspective on the consumption and demand of the semiconductors in India ecosystem, consumption is what basically, irrespective of where the semiconductor is coming, but it's getting consumed in India through the devices. Demand is where basically we order the semiconductor from India, right? So based on your analysis and the report, can you throw some light?
Thank you, Satya. I hope all of you can hear me. So before I answer that question, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers, ET Governance, for inviting me, and also especially thank Manas ji for arranging a wonderful darshan at Sri Jagannath ji today morning at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much. I feel energized. And let me also congratulate the state of Odisha. Morning, I don't know whether you paid attention, but when we conducted the study report, the reports which Satya mentioned now, one of the study report that we conducted was the readiness of different states in India. About 20 states we looked at, and we applied about 125 parameters to see where are the states, because everyone wants to play in the World Cup, but are they ready? Now that's what we looked at, and we found Odisha coming right on top within the top 7, and that was an excellent kind of benchmark. Now coming to the specific question which Satya asked, India's consumption of electronic products, which includes the laptops, the mobile phones, the TVs, all electronic products put together by 25-26, our study shows will be touching $300 billion. That's the consumption of electronic products manufactured in India, imported in whatever form. India will consume $300 billion worth of electronic products. This will consist of about anywhere between 85 to 95 billion dollars worth of semiconductor components. So that's a demand. And now when I say demand, for realizing this $300 billion worth of products, 95 billion dollars worth of semiconductor components have to go into them. So from a consumption point of view, though you are buying a gadget, the semiconductors that go into those gadgets are of this kind of value. And at the moment, India probably is not producing anything of substance of this 85-90 billion dollars worth of semiconductors. A lot of passive components are getting made, capacitors, resistors, relays, transformers, etc. But active devices, a little bit of power semiconductor is happening here and there, but nothing which we can talk in terms of billions of dollars. Now the other paradox is that even today, today's consumption of semiconductors in India is about $17 billion. And our product consumption is about $120-130 billion. So even this $17 billion that we consume today, the billing is not happening in India. The billing is happening in other countries because they all come as semi-assembled, sub-assembled kits. And all the manufacturers who claim that they are manufacturing electronic products, including phones, they are doing a lot of assembly and test work, but not the basic bottom-up significant value addition is not happening. So this is the ground reality as of today, and that is where IESA as an organization where we have 4 verticals. First one is industry. All our members are from the industry. Then we have government. We work with the central government and states like Odisha in formulating the policies which will enable this change to happen, the local consumption supported by local manufacturing. It can be at the system level, it can be at the chip level. And then the third vector the third pillar for us is academia. We work very closely with academic institutions to create the required talent at the right time with the required quality. Let me emphasize the required quality of talent. And the fourth one, of course, is the society in which we live. We heard excellent points being made by the speaker from Acer, from Madam, all of you heard how the societal impact of technology is very important. So transforming Odisha through technology, I think it's a very far-sighted vision by the government of Odisha. But coming back to a very precise answer, currently the manufacturing of semiconductors in India and even systems consumed in India, the percentage is still skewed significantly towards import. And how do we go about and change that is what we will be focusing on the next few years. But as the speaker before us, Sabah Karim Madam said, the next few years are going to be transformational. And I don't know whether we are ready for it, but I am very optimistic. Thank you.
Rajiv, you wanted to comment on this?
I think to add on what Krishna said, I think out of this $27 billion of semiconductors, which gets consumed directly or indirectly, only 2.7 billion worth is basically designed in the country. I think that's where the gap is.
Ordered in the country, not
is
designed.
ordered in the country. So we consume 27, but then only 2.7. So there's a huge opportunity for us, and that's where Satya, with his role as EPIC CEO, is basically trying to have more and more products which are local Indian brands, and we are seeing that transformation at a SME level. But then we need big brands who can produce phones like iPhones or Xiaomi's of this world, so that we actually control and we can actually cut purchase orders from the country. I think we as an association, together with Krishna, are working on it. How do we ensure that those decisions start happening here? Once those decisions start happening here, I think we can say, and as the numbers speak, we're talking about 64 billion by 64 billion of semiconductor consumption by 2026, going to $100 billion by 2030. I think we are going on the right track, but what I would love is that $100 billion of semiconductor decisions starts happening in the country. That means the 10% of the global semiconductor market will be in India. That is phenomenal, and that will be the transformation for us in the semiconductor space. Thank you.
So just to summarize, consumption is basically 25 billion, 27 billion dollar. Only 10% of that is ordered from Indian companies to the semiconductor companies like Texas Instrument, NXP, and all of those things, right? Our goal is to basically increase this percentage to at least 25% basically over the next year. So whatever Rajiv said, $2.3 billion, once we reach $100 billion and 25%, then it becomes $25 billion, which makes the fabs and all the other entities very much basically feasible. Now, basically, we have been talking about transforming Odisha since morning. Just to Manashji, Odisha has put up a lot of four progressive policies, Electropreneur Park, Startup Odisha, OCHIP, so many different programs. So where do you see Odisha in next 5 years? Not just semiconductor manufacturing, but fabless chip design, manufacturing, as well as basically supply chain for the raw materials of the which goes into the semiconductors, which may be consumed by local fab or it can be supplied to other fabs like whatever is coming in Gujarat and other places. So how do you see Odisha 5 years later, 2028? What is your picture of Odisha and semiconductor?
Oh, hello. So, very good afternoon. And first of all, I'd like to thank the ET for selecting the subject semiconductor fab ecosystem, laying the foundation building. And semiconductor is the talk of the entire globe. It's a buzzword, starting from international, India, each and every state talk about semiconductor, fabless, they're coming out with policies and all, and also setting up such a wonderful panel where eminent speaker like Director IIT, who himself is a VLSI technocrat in VLSI design specialist, Dr. Pradeep Gupta, Dr. Satya Gupta, he is the chairman of VLSI Foundation. Then from Foundry, Texas Instruments, Mr. Rajiv Kusu, and I say it was very such for setting up such a wonderful panel here. So before answering to your question, the semiconductor, I think all you are experts sitting here for the knowledge of the audience here. The semiconductor market itself, it stood around globally around $580 billion and expected to reach $1 trillion by 2030, right? With a CAGR of 7%. So even if India per se, we have not done much in this sector, bearing we are good in designing because we have got analytical skills, we have got all mathematical skills. We have done good work in the R&D and design, particularly in a particular pocket that is in Bangalore. Some things are happening. TI is there, Intel there, the companies are there. Most of the design companies are there. Odisha being the late, because we have done a lot of things in the IT and IT services, but as far as electronics is concerned, it is, I can say, we are in an advantage position being in a late runner in this. We have created a first electronics policy, which is one of the best implementable policy. I discussed with couple of investors, those who are looking for not semiconductor, it's PCB manufacturing and all, solar panel module manufacturing. They say it is one of the best because this kind of subsidy, which is there almost 30% capital investment subsidy on top of the government of India subsidy. And also we've got a PLI production link incentive there. So we have a electronics policy in place, and we have established EP. But before that, I want to mention here that I think you can correct me again. There are mostly four key pillars in the semiconductor ecosystem. The one is semiconductor manufacturing, one is semiconductor, I think, product or IP, then semiconductor talent and semiconductor supply chain. So even it's very difficult to have a fab here in the first one, semiconductor manufacturing, but we have to prepare but the other space where the semiconductor IP, semiconductor product or talent, we can really play an active role because of the in the last previous panel, the principal secretary IT, principal secretary industry, they talk about the skill availability, the resource availability in the state of Odisha, which can be a good feeder for this thing. And we have to, like the professor director IIT mentioned, we have to change the mindset because this is something is a niche area. Even I can give you one example. Recently the JEE main result came out, right? So few of my nephews, they scored almost 97 percentile. They are not interested to enter into where they are saying we will not get a computer science. I said, what for? There is a electronics, there is a lot of opportunity. That even the parent mindsets are not there. So I request today we have done a great job. Thanks to again Dr. Satyagupta for announcing the Odisha chapter. It's the fourth VLSI Odisha chapter you announced in Odisha, right? And also we've signed an MOU with ISA for development of electronics ecosystem in the state of Odisha. And I request both of you, along with the academic institute, to create awareness among the students and what is the future, how they can prosper in this, except only running behind the, that is also service industry also needs to be there. But this technology industry, they have to get inside, they have to, and we should do some kind of awareness program kind of thing within the institutions along with the industries. And also recently, I'd like to add, Odisha government, everybody already talked about that. We are coming with a semiconductor fab and fabless policy. And we have engaged again the ISR to draft that policy. Dr. Satyagupta also helped a lot. And 2 days back, we had a discussion. We had an industry consultation meeting at Bangalore because Bangalore, we have got a lot of industries present in this particular area. We got very good feedback. The idea behind is which it should be a really useful policy and attractive and best policy which is required to bring the ecosystem in the state of Odisha. Not in fact not now the manufacturing, but at least in the fabless design system. Already there are a lot of companies, around 10-15 companies, they are working in for large customers, US based customer on this particular design space, and we are anticipating few companies, large design companies also coming to Odisha. And before that, we are going to declare this after approval of cabinet. Once we will have the consolidated information from the industries, which we did 2 days back, we are going to publish this policy. And to again, we have done little bit on the startup front in the electronics sector. With STPI, the state government has funded maximum. We created a electropreneur park. It is first of its kind in the eastern part of the country, where any idea can be converted to a product and can be commercialized. So that is one initiative the state government has taken. The policy initiative, we have a EMC, electronics manufacturing cluster, where couple of solar panel module manufacturers, they have shown interest. Few PCB manufacturing companies, they have shown interest. We have got a very good CFC, the Common Facility Center, is coming up within the. It is for useful for the this kind of industry. And with this, I am 100% sure that in the other sector, in terms of talent building, in terms of the other supply chain in the upstream and downstream, make OSAT or ATMP kind of thing, we could able to attract the investment to the state of Odisha. Thank you.
Thank you. Any audience question? Yes, 100% yes. First of all, see, in the semiconductor, we have to just go away from the mindset of only manufacturing, right? What drives the semiconductor industry is what we call chip products, right? Chip products drive the manufacturing. Right? Manufacturing unit is a building without occupants, right? If you don't put any products in the manufacturing, then basically it's an empty factory, right? So manufacturing will happen, but at the same time, basically making semiconductor products is also very important. Otherwise, you will not be able to utilize your factories properly. And in semiconductors, if you are not utilizing your factory 90% plus, then you are never going to be able to make money, right? So answer to your question is that in next 10 years, we should see multiple fabs, multiple ATMP units of different type of the technology. And I am very confident that basically before 2030, we will see a operating fab in state of Odisha also.
Satya, if I can add to what Satya said, semiconductor manufacturing itself require not just a wafer manufacturing capability. A semiconductor manufacturing process involves something like 200 plus inputs in the form of gases, metals, minerals, chemicals. Last count I did, it was around 220, and depending on the process node, it keeps increasing. And this is where a state like Odisha, which is rich in many of those metals, minerals, etc., stand to an advantage in creating the ecosystem for manufacturing of semiconductors. But I think Satya hit the nail on its head when he said it is just not the manufacturing process alone we need to get fixated. How do we bring out the product? The design ecosystem, the wafer manufacturing, the assembly, test, marking and packaging, and the supply chain distribution network. Today, approximately 60% of the semiconductors consumed in the Asia region of the world are getting distributed out of Singapore, and they don't manufacture any of them. They are a pure trading location where everyone has a warehouse. Very efficiently they manage that whole input-output flow, and they get about 5% of the net transfer process profit, which itself, out of about $200 billion approximately, you do the maths, 5% of that, just for managing the logistics of supply chain. So these are some of the factors we need to get into our head, not just the manufacturing process alone, which Satya emphasized. Thank you.
Last question to Manajji. We all talk about basically we are manufacturing and consuming a lot of electronics products in the country, but we don't have any brands or basically electronics products, right? Sorry for the Acer guys, but basically we don't have any brands basically of that type. And it is generally seen that government is one of the largest buyer of electronics, right? That is basically well-known fact, right? Whether it computers, tablets, basically phones and everything. Like UPI has some 12.5 lakh phone they want to buy, right? How can we leverage this demand from the state to build the local products and local brands?
As you are rightly said, government is the maximum largest consumer. So we, as such, we have got a very ambitious program, which recently government of Odisha launched in the name of Odisha Chip. The idea behind is to create a Odisha Chip Technology Center in a PPP mode. It will be managed through a PPP mode, and the facility will have all EDA tools. You have all the lab facility, everything. It's something there, something on shared basis, and the industry, the academia can access to that to create products, to create IPs within that, and subsequently that can be commercialized.
Where
And
do I sell
also-
it once I make the product?
So I'm coming to that. So once the product is ready, parallelly we are creating a mechanism, policy mechanism, wherein there is a preferential procurement of domestic production of product we are putting in that policy. It is there in the electronics policy as well as this will be there within the semiconductor policy. This is one of the suggestions we received at Bangalore also. Then this chip center will definitely, Odisha chip center will be a driving force, and wherein we want to skill along with IITs, along with other institute of eminence, the talent, the people here, and we want to give them some kind of research assistance, intern assistance through this program. And ultimately, we were looking for to create at least one product, one chip in a year's time, which can be ready for to go to a fab. Fab may not be here. Fab can be, you can use TSMC or SCL lab or anywhere, but it can be ready to go for a fab. That is the alternate objectives. And Mr. Gupta asked about why can't we have semiconductor company, this industry, manufacturing? Why not? Because this is a very large, the supply chain is very large. There, even if fab, when US is investing $200 million in attracting fab companies there, it is very difficult. But again, we should keep our finger crossed. So every state is looking for that, we will have that. And that internal demand should be there so that the fab company, because now design companies are there, the fab company can be attracted to the state of Odisha because of its, obviously, if you can create talent, we have got lots of natural resources. If you can able to create the talent pool, I don't think there should be any, with the right kind of policy support from the government, there should not be any difficult to set up a fab in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question.